It has been 80 days since Karine Jean-Pierre took over as White House press secretary, and in that time she's conducted 38 briefings with the White House press corps. And let's be honest, it's been a rough go. When she was announced, many in the media focused on the historic nature of her selection. The first woman of color who self-identifies as a lesbian. Now, she had good and important experience as chief of staff for Kamala Harris and deputy press secretary under Jen Psaki. But that doesn't necessarily translate into being a really good spokesperson for the White House, which is a critical and tricky job. But she checked the boxes that the administration apparently wanted. And that also makes it harder to speak the truth about her tenure. The reality is that she just isn't very good at the job. She's clearly smart, committed to the administration, but that's not enough for the role, and no one's really willing to say it. Roughly 3 months in, Jean-Pierre is mostly getting attention for her gaffes, mistakes, and often seeming inability to communicate the administration's message, which is her job. Take, for example, yesterday's briefing when she was asked about reproductive rights following the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade.
When the Supreme Court made this extreme decision to take away a constitutional right, it was an unconstitutional action by them, a right that was around for almost 50 years, a right that women had to make a decision on their bodies and how they want to start their families.
All right, it's obviously not an unconstitutional action by them. It's a decision the administration thinks is dangerous and wrong. And sure, she may have just misspoken there, but as White House press secretary, you get judged on being prepared and precise. But it was just another in a series of sort of confusing moments from Jean-Pierre. Take, for example, how she handled Fox's Peter Doocy, who asked her about a Chinese threat to attack Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
An official who is associated with Chinese state media is suggesting that if Speaker Pelosi tries to go to Taiwan, her plane could be shot down. Does the president have a response to that?
You know, I've been asked about, I know you're asking specifically about the rhetoric that we're hearing from China, but as it relates to the speaker's travels, it's something that we're just not going to speak to. Right now, that's a hypothetical.
Foreign governments threatening to shoot down the plane carrying the Speaker of the House, and it's a question she's been asked before, and the response is a word salad. And after President Biden was diagnosed with COVID, Jean-Pierre dismissed questions of where he contracted it, which raised the eyebrows of CNN's Jeff Zeleny.
You said it doesn't matter where he got it, but how can it not matter where he got it if that is something that, of course, is involved in contact tracing? This administration is taking it very seriously. How can it not matter?
I think what I was trying to say is what's important now is that he has mild symptoms.
It's never great when a press secretary says, quote, what I was trying to say. And her missteps have not just happened in the briefing room.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him.
It's the president of the United States. Press secretary seemed taken aback that Don Lemon would ask a totally fair and tough question, which is supposed to be his job. Maybe she became too accustomed to the kinds of questions she got asked as a paid analyst on MSNBC.
I mean, you're pretty impressive. Teaching at Columbia, working at MSNBC, you worked on multiple presidential campaigns. You've really built yourself into an impressive professional. Do you always feel that way? Do you feel good about yourself?
It's so funny. Not really. Sometimes I have to constantly remind myself of all the things that I've accomplished.
All right, I'll admit that was a cheap shot, putting that in. But even Politico is giving her poor reviews. In an article from June 29 titled, quote, Karine's tough debut, they noted a rocky first month in which her answers have baffled reporters and even made some White House colleagues wince. There are others in this administration who've proven to be far more capable, like John Kirby, who recently got moved from the Pentagon to the White House. I wonder why. Kirby has been featured a lot recently in the White House briefing room because he's just better at it than Jean-Pierre. Imagine the uproar in the media. If Jean-Pierre were replaced by Kirby right now. You can just imagine what they'd be saying. Joining me now is a member of the White House Correspondents Association, J.D. Durkin, an old friend and colleague. J.D., welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Great
All
to
right,
join
you think I'm wrong?
I think you're being perhaps a little bit too unfair. This is the most difficult job in Washington, D.C. And I think the fact is for Karine, look, I think she's in an unenviable position. I think it's tough for any White House press secretary. She's obviously dealt with the baby shortage formula, inflation, gas prices, the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Every White House has challenges, there's no doubt. I think it's still fair to say she's getting her footing, and I think it'll still be a while before we can look back at the legacy. And she is replacing Jen Psaki, who even Chris Wallace said when he was at Fox News was one of the greatest press secretaries in American history. That's a tough act to follow.
But I'm not comparing her to Psaki, right? And I think the notion that...
Many are.
Fine. I'm not going to compare her to Psaki. I'm saying the notion that you get a sort of trial period when you're the press secretary for the White House, well, you know, it's only 3 months in. You got to give her time. That's not the way it works.
Right.
This is a big time. This is a big job. You don't get the warm-up of saying, oh, you know, I'm going to take 80 days. Maybe I'll take a few months to get my feel for the job. You got to be ready for that job from day one. And it seems to me that she's not, and let me follow up with that, and it seems to me that there is a reluctance on the part of many in the media, I give Politico credit, to say that, A, because she's the press secretary and you don't want to alienate the press secretary,
No, you don't.
and B, I think, because of the firsts, right? She's the first black woman.
Sure.
She's the first LGBTQ member, et cetera. And I think that there's a reluctance on the part of the media to go there. Is that unfair?
That's not unfair. I think equity is something this White House has tried to prioritize. Representation is incredibly important, and I think the White House wants to at least have that visible face. That does not take away from, as she said there with Mika Brzezinski, our friend from MSNBC, her accomplishments and things like that. But listen, when I speak with veteran White House reporters who have covered administrations going back to Ronald Reagan, they say, okay, maybe Karine from time to time, she fumbles with the pages, she has to read off the book, she's imprecise. Wouldn't you prefer that? If you're a fair, objective, outside observer, would you not prefer that to the constant stream of misinformation that we got from the Sean Spicers, from the Sarah Sanderses? The presentation may not be perfect, Dan, but in terms of comparison, I know you didn't directly compare it to previous people who've done the job. You have a lot of people in the White House press corps who may be slightly more inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt because they just had 4 years of the last administration.
Well, I'll give you a comparison. You asked for a comparison. John Kirby. He's better than she is, right?
I think. Come
on, just say it.
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
but
of course he's
think,
better.
But I think to some
You
degree,
can't even say it.
But he's more. Yeah, I can admit that John Kirby's better, but he's more polished. He's probably more experienced in terms of being
So then
telegenic
why
and
doesn't he have
doing
the job? What do you mean? He's more polished, he's more experienced, and he doesn't have the job, and he's now the deputy, and she's in charge. Come on, let's be honest here, right?
I also think the opportunity for John Kirby has come front and center because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that has understandably put a focus on foreign policy. Of course, but that's why you see John Kirby front and center.
He's
not
at
only
the White House now.
and he's at the White House. Well, of course,
Why
because
is he at the
more people are going to tune into the 2:30 briefing from the White House. The cable news networks will take that briefing as opposed to the
and they
Pentagon.
want Kirby there instead of Jean-Pierre. Because
Well, his specialty is foreign policy right now.
and he's better than she is at this.
Well, how do you gauge? Listen, you're a longtime media vet.
I'm gauging it purely based on my opinion, right? There's no metrics apart from saying that you talk to the folks who watch media a lot, and you talk to them privately. You can't ask them this publicly, because publicly they won't admit it. But privately, they'll say, God, she's terrible.
I think one thing that
She's
she
a
fell
disaster.
into for her first few weeks is she always tried to dig for the answer. And those are a lot of the, I don't want to say gotcha moments, but the RNC, the Republicans, really tried to go after her and say, look how she fumbles through the pages, instead of just accepting, which a lot of press secretaries learn to do, to say, hey, listen, I don't have an answer to that. Let me get back to you. Come back to the upper press office in a couple hours. I'll try and get you a quote or a bit more context. The first few weeks that Karine was on the job, I think her focus was, I need to have an answer. Let me fumble through the pages for 15 or 20 seconds. It results in dead air on live national television, and a lot of her critics will beat that up. But again, as I speak with veterans who have been doing this job, I started covering the White House full-time in 2017. I got a lot of friends and colleagues, Dan, as you know. They've been doing it much longer than I have. They say, she's earnest, she's honest, and there is a bit of good faith, at least again compared to some of the press secretaries we've had. But I do think the criticism's fair. You're not wrong.
But I think the good faith is also coming from sometimes reasons that don't relate to the quality
performance of the job.
the work. Jay, thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.